Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Hi, this is the first podcast, our first episode of Harvesting Wisdom. I'm going to be your host, Mike McMahon. Today, my guests are Dr. Peter Rillero and his wife, Kim Rillero, who are both with Urban Farming Education. Before we get too far into it, I want to start by pouring a little of our wine that we've made, and that'll help us stay lubricated. This is a Zinfandel blend that we grew and we had made down in Cochise County. And thanks for joining me here today.
We're honored to be here and having a toast with the founder of Urban Farming Education.
Great.
Thank you.
So, Peter, I'm going to start with you. Mike, first question for you is, you've been doing science basically as a teacher at ASU, not all at ASU, but you've been doing this for about 40 years. So can you explain what you've done, what's been your focus, some of your early career stuff, and just tell us a little about yourself there?
Sure. So as you said, I started as a Peace Corps volunteer in Kenya 40 years ago doing science education. And one of my early projects implementing gardening in the school was fortuitous because it wasn't well planned. But I had started deciding that we wanted a papaya orchard and an avocado orchard. And so I had the boys make a bed, and I had a papaya and, cut up open a papaya and put the seeds in the bed. Didn't let them dry or anything. Took the avocado pits and put them right in, didn't let them dry. And in retrospect, that was probably the only species I could have done that is planted wet seeds, and they grew, and it was just nice. And then we planted them by the classrooms, in between the classrooms, because back even 40 years ago, they were worried about desertification, and so we figured if they can harvest fruit from them, they're not going to cut down the trees. So about 8 years later, I went back there, and I met an agriculture teacher, and he started showing me around the same things I had planted. And he was telling me that he had planted them. And I was okay with that because he was taking ownership of it. And he had expanded it as well. And that's one of the principles is I think you need to have people who take ownership in gardening, in science education and other things. And ever since the Peace Corps, I've been passionate about being a science teacher, science educator. I have my PhD in science education from the Ohio State University. And I've been passionate about doing teacher education and also passionate about having cross-cultural experiences with different countries. Kim and I were fortunate that we were able to spend 6 months in Costa Rica, 6 months as a Fulbright scholar in Iceland, and 6 months in the Philippines, all doing science education. So I have a lot of experience. I have to do research to keep my job at ASU as a tenured professor. But my true passion is developing curriculum, developing activities, and working with teachers.
Great. I find it coincidental. We call this harvesting wisdom, and it's coincidental because throughout our careers, and I have basically two generations of people I work with here, right? So it's guys like us that are on our fourth quarter of life, and we come in with lots of experience, lots of knowledge, very limited, our skill sets are focused, and we know kind of what we're doing, but we're kind of toward the end. A lot of friends of mine are retired, and, they don't know what to do, but what's kind of cool is taking the skills that you're good at and being able to continue going forward on things that are interesting. What I found really kind of interesting is when you were in the Peace Corps 40 years ago, you were doing agriculture. Now, you didn't do any agriculture education or gardening before that yourself, and then in science, you probably didn't do a lot of business or anything like that. But now here you are, 40 years later, and now you're involved with us at Urban Farming, and you're still over at ASU. You're not an employee technically of Urban Farming, but you do a lot of work with grants, and we've applied for a lot of things with ASU. In this whole time that you're working with students, how can you describe that process of working with students and making them curious and working with them and their talents, kind of directing them, and then how does that all tie back into urban farming?
Good question. Yeah, so obviously, I never thought of the fourth quarter of my life like that with you, but that's a kind of a good thought.
Sorry
And
about
just,
that.
Just for the record, Mike and
Little
I,
reality check.
we found that we were both born on the same year and that we attended the same overlap for exactly the same 4 years at University of Buffalo.
Right, so
but
yeah.
we never met each other until
We probably bumped into each other in the Rathskeller.
That's right. That's right. But I would say one of the things I'm passionate about is students doing science research. And when I was teaching in the Bronx, they made me science research coordinator, and we had to do science fair projects. And we were competing against a powerhouse called Bronx High School of Science. And if you're from the New York area, you kind of know that was a big player. And it was interesting trying to get students to do their own research. And then later on, I started getting more involved with it. I did different projects in terms of published articles. Intel had me do an evaluation of Intel ISAF, which is the big granddaddy of all science fairs. And I've been a judge. But I think gardening really works well to get students involved with science research. And I would say probably before the first app-controlled published experiments were done, farmers were doing controlled experiments all the time. They would vary something and see what happened. They would change this and see what
For
happened.
10,000 years.
Yeah. And it was a life and death issue. And so when our son did a science fair project in kindergarten, he, of course, did it with plants. And I think working with plants, like you can't really work with vertebrates to do science research. It's just not ethical. And then you could work with things like bacteria and fungus or insects. But you do a project and it's like, okay, what's the utility of it? But you do a gardening project, especially growing food, and you find out a better way to do it, I think you can instantly see the utility in it. So I think for me, the ultimate, there's all these knowledge about science, which is good, but in terms of science understanding and abilities, the best thing to do is to have students do their own investigations and report those investigations. And I think gardening is a powerful tool for doing that.
Yeah. So, when I first started urban farming education, it's like everything in my life. It was not planned extremely well. It was kind of serendipity. I had that downtown Phoenix, or uptown Phoenix, we had the Agave Farms, which was 17 acres. And I think I had met you guys after I had just established that. And the segue into the nonprofit world was I needed to have a nonprofit to be able to get corporations to come in and do team building and that sort of thing in order to try to generate some money for that, because that just cost a fortune. And it was a different journey for me, learning how to do community garden, and I did it 1,000 ways the wrong way. I don't know if I ever picked the right way, but I can certainly help people, telling them all the different paths not to take. But in that process, we started this nonprofit. Then we had a lot of other nonprofits there at the farm that we made available, the entertainment space, for them to do fundraising and that sort of thing. And Kim, you came on and got stuck with a lot of bizarre different tasks. But in that process, we kind of came up to the realization that, farming and urban farming has to be done in an individual locale, right? It has to be done at that school or at a shelter or at somebody's home, because, having people drive or take buses in from the outskirts of Maricopa County, the largest county in the country, into one little community garden doesn't really pan out as well. We realized our scale and our scope would improve, right? So we started actually trying to put gardens into all these other locations before COVID hit. And then we've evolved with this, and we didn't know exactly what we wanted to build. So it's been like almost 5 years. It was 6 years of having Agave Farms, and we're in our 5th year now at urban farming, and I think we finally found our path. And that path, when it comes down to it, where education is to try to work with students really to develop curiosity, but to also give them kind of the overarching understanding of the global issues, how the world works, how soil works, seed, germination, that kind of thing. So we stumbled into this concept of STEM. Now, STEM, I had a degree in engineering, well, in the engineering college in environmental design, and I still never quite understood what that word meant. And I think a lot of professionals, they understand the concept, but it's not truly, you don't have a STEM job, you have an engineering job or a medical job or a construction job. So I'm going to ask you about STEM because you're kind of the guy who guided this thing with you and Kim and took us in that direction. So walk me through this whole STEM thing that we're doing right now.
Yeah, that's a astute question. I think the word STEM is so popular because it means so many different things to everybody and can mean everything to anybody. But for me, of course, some people, if they teach mathematics, they say, oh, I teach STEM because I teach mathematics. But for me, when you think about what are the characteristics of a STEM school, STEM program, one of the things is the integration. So you're not teaching science separately and mathematics separately and technology. You're trying to fuse them all together. And I think that schools who have it right maybe devote a 8th period of the day only to doing projects. And they have that integration. So that's the second component, is having some kind of project-based learning. So one of the things that we're excited about with Kim and I, we developed our Plot of Sunshine, which is a project-based learning approach for grades 3 through 6. Do you want to talk a little bit about project-based learning, or about our Plot of Sunshine?
So our Plot of Sunshine, which I just feel is our baby, is such a unique experience for teachers because it gets gardening into the classroom and not just as a after-school special. And teachers want to be that teacher. They want to be that cool teacher. And now they can. And in 7 weeks, the children pair up and they are given 1 square cube of garden space where they plot and they plan and they plant. And then they observe and they take notes and they measure and they graph. And which graph do they need to use? Should it be a line graph or a bar graph? They learn about qualitative and quantitative observations. And at the end of 7 weeks, the items that we have chosen to grow are at a point where they can be harvested and they can have a culminating party. Also within that 7 weeks, they're not only getting this problem-based, project-based learning, but they're also getting individual little problems where surface area, what does that have to do with roots or with plants, and how do the plants and roots work together to make it grow? It's an amazing 7 weeks that they can experience.
Right.
And going back to your question, Mike, you asked about STEM, and then I introduced project-based learning. Project-based learning really has the idea of student choice. They have to have some choice to make it a true project. And here they have a choice of what seeds they want to plant, where they want to plant them, how many, and then usually you have a culminating experience. And for us, the culminating experience is going out to the garden, harvesting. And one of the big things that they harvest is radishes, because we do everything in 7 weeks, and radishes are perfect for harvesting there. And in our logo, hopefully we can flash the logo of our Plot of Sunshine, we feature a radish. But it's so exciting for them to slice the radish, to take some of the lettuce and other materials and put it on their tostadas and have that culminating experience tostada party.
And I'll admit, when we were searching for different direction and early on, and then we got COVID. So we all pivoted and we did food giveaways, because we basically couldn't do anything else. We couldn't even go to schools, right? So we had to change that, and then we came back, and we were still kind of just looking for what we were doing. And I was coming from a different place. We had a lot of different unique characters throughout all the organizations that I have. And I think that if there's a success, it has to do with the fact that everybody does have an agenda. Reining people in is always difficult, but the two of you had your own understanding, and I'll admit that when we first started, my concept was, why isn't gardening part of every single school? They have the space, they have the facility, they got the water, they got the teachers, they got the students, they've got all the product that they can recycle and do, and why isn't it built into the regular classroom? Because when I was a kid, even in engineering, I was kind of turned off to abstract concepts. I wanted to have them, tell me tangibly how to do something. So I think that what we're talking about is really concrete concepts, pretty simple. Plant a seed in dirt and water it, get the sun to hit it, and now you got plants, right? And then you can start talking about photosynthesis and absorption of water and all these different things. But to me, it was the key to how to do it. And my question really was, how do we do that? Do we have to change policy? And I had no education experience, so you'd come in. And it's almost like we're speaking different languages. And I ask, from both of you, well, what's the process? And you're using terms like project-based learning and whatever. I'm like, whatever. I don't even know what that is. So our process has been such that we've now structured, and our plot of sunshine is one. And so who are we really trying to reach? What are the grades, and what is the concept on the very short term for UFE?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start off and I'll ask him to explain the curricula that we're developing. But you asked a very important question, and you focus on starting with the hands-on activity. And that's key. We believe that you should start with exploration first and have the exploration. And then after they've had the experiences, then you can have the explanation. Then you can start bringing in the vocabulary and other things. That's not how schools always do it, especially teachers who are very literary. They want to front load all the vocabulary. Oh, you need to know this, or you need to know this word, you need to know that word. But there's nothing for the words to stick to the students. So it's better to let them have the experience first and then talk about it, have them talk about it, have them reflect on it, and then build the concepts after they've had it. But maybe, Kim, you can talk about the curriculum.
So although our plot of sunshine is for 3rd through 6th grade, we have had teachers take our professional development that have been kindergarten through 12th grade. I had a physics teacher, 12th grade physics teacher, take it and just absolutely loved it, and just made tweaks to it so that it would be more appropriate for her students. But we are in the process of developing other curriculum for different age groups. We are starting with pre-K, and we are going to go all the way through 12th grade. Right now, we are working on our We Greens, or We Grow.
And that's WEE for we.
And what grade levels are those?
That's going to be our kindergarten program.
That's the kindergarten.
So it's preschool to 2nd grade, give or
No,
take?
we are actually, and we're working with people from the Center for Whole Child Development, but we're actually looking for a curriculum that when the kid comes to school, that they not only learn gardening, but they learn the mechanics of what it's like to be in a classroom. They learn how to exist with classmates. So it's a whole child approach that uses gardening as the lean-in. We also think it's going to be really effective for working with new teachers who maybe are going to struggle for the first few months. And so we really want it to be a whole child curriculum that's very detailed. We see teachers as using it in August and September to start the year. Or maybe some teachers might say, okay, I'm going to wait until January after they come back for the long Christmas break. And for a lot of teachers in kindergarten, it's like restarting them again. So we have the WEE, W-E-E, grow for kindergarten.
We also have pedal pails, which will be for the preschool kids, and they will be growing flowers, marigolds, and
watercress. Watercress. I was just in England. Every meal you eat has watercress sprouts on top of it.
So right now we are having a teacher, a preschool teacher, who is working on it in her classroom and is really engaged with it and enjoying it. What I like about the We Grow is that it's going to help the teachers and the students begin a routine. So at the beginning of the year, it's new to all of them. School is new, school is different. They need a routine, and it's going to help them with their routine. I also call it, because they are growing microgreens, I call it the McDonald's of gardening, because the microgreens grow so fast, and
Sure.
within just a couple of
10-day
weeks,
cycle or whatever,
yeah,
sure.
they can have.
But so the programs, we just talked about three of them. The goal in the short run is to get grouping of grades to cover all the way from preschool to senior year in high school, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, with time, because this is a lot of work, with time, you're going back and you're doing each grade level individually, ideally, so that we now have it. And you showed me, it was kind of this matrix when we talk about curriculum, because you disciplined me early when I was talking about, well, that's a lesson plan and that's curriculum, whatever. Well, so
Well,
walk me-
let me comment on that. 'Cause
Walk me through on that.
That's a good point, because you will find a lot of activity books in gardening. And I've written my own activity books in science education and stuff. But activity books are different than a curriculum. Activities are just like, oh, I can open to this page and do an activity to activity. The more challenging thing is to develop a curriculum. And what we're trying to do, working together, is develop a spiral curriculum where a student can start in kindergarten, go up through grades 1 through 3, go up into middle school, and go up to high school. In each, as they spiral up, they're getting a deeper and deeper
You call
understanding.
that scaffolding or spiraling?
Well, Bruner was the famous educational psychologist. He called it a spiral curriculum. So I'm using Bruner's terminology for it. But we also have a kind of a middle school, high school curriculum called Sowing Scientific Seeds.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the one where students are going to be doing their own investigations with a 1 square foot area, or 1 square meter to make it international. And when we go to Malawi, we're going to hopefully pilot test it with 2 girls' schools and run it through. We also have a grant written for northern Malawi, Robert.
For the lake area.
Yeah, up north. So that might get funded, where we'll have that project there. But we're excited about it because that could be, whether you're in 7th grade or whether you're in 11th grade, you can choose something that means meaningful to you at that age level. So it's very much adjustable to different grade levels, because you're choosing a project that interests you, and you're designing a controlled group experiment to investigate what
More
you're
independent learning in some
Exactly.
respects. So,
Yeah.
before we move on to Malawi, and we'll talk about that in a second, so let's just kind of get the listeners an idea of what goes on. We've been doing these professional developments. So professional development means that we're building capacity for teachers, right? And they're learning a little about the STEM concepts, and how this incorporates into that. The idea of STEM really is that you're tying it into most subjects, right? Math, all the science, biology, chemistry, whatever, agronomy. All of these things lessons can be derived through through this process. But when you were tying in curriculum, how do you do that? Because you showed me this whole matrix. 3rd grade, Arizona, the state of Arizona has very specific things. So how do you do that?
You want that, or you want me to take it?
You go right
I'll
ahead.
take that one. Well, first of all, obviously teachers are very stressed and administrators are very stressed. And so if you don't show that your curriculum is indexed to state standards, it doesn't get off the ground. So you have to have it indexed. And our plot of Sunshine is remarkable for how many standards it addresses in science, but it can also be integrated easily into mathematics and language arts. But the general approach to working with teachers is they have to experience it as a student first. They have to have those wow moments, the aha moments. And I still remember when we were working with the first ASAP group, and we'll give a shout out to the ASAP program at Arizona State University for sponsoring so much of this PD. But the teachers, they were coming in every other week. So they were, after week 4, they're coming in to the final planting. And I was outside with a camera waiting for them to walk outside and see their plants. They walked out, you would not believe it. It's like moved a bus, excitement, wow. They're just, their faces lit up when they saw how much growth they had achieved. So you have to have that spirit. They have to have the wow of discovery, and they have to get that part. So once they get that part, so then we go through the pedagogical aspects of how to teach it. But the first, they experience it as a learner, and then they experience and talk about how do we implement this as a teacher.
And I think of ourselves as a Trojan horse. And that is that once we actually tie all this curriculum in, which is, we didn't set the curriculum, but once we have, and we've done it on a grade by grade basis, and we're also immersing ourselves in all these school districts. But once we're there, the idea to me is that this becomes a sustainable item, that the schools and the state of Arizona, the educational gurus that run all of that, realize that this is cost effective, and it really, we think that it's going to drive more kids into STEM profession. Not just that though, just build that curiosity and work within the school. Kim, and I'll finish up with you. So far, the experience has been what I'd call explosive. You went up to a lecture or seminar or something recently, and tell me a little about that. What was the feedback you've had?
Well, what's really exciting is having been able to do the professional development with the teachers. And I stress so often that you have to start small and you have to celebrate everything. Even if the seeds don't grow, you celebrate that, because that's just one more step in learning. It's a problem.
Mistakes.
How do we fix this? How do we correct it? How do we make it different next time? And the teachers are now realizing, you know what, we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have all the answers. And it's just really been phenomenal. And yes, you're right. I was just up at a conference, a rural STEM conference up in Flagstaff. And the folks that are in charge of the ASAP program were there. Amanda and Mike, and they said, Kim, your program, the Our Plot of Sunshine Professional Development, has just been one of the best in the ASAP curriculum that they are providing. And they said there has been over between 250 to 300 new gardens established
Just
in
from that
Arizona.
first
just from that, yeah.
beginning of this.
Yes.
And we've been doing it. And you've been all over. Where in Arizona have we gone?
So we have traveled to Yuma, which is perfect. I mean,
You're going
that's
to farmland.
I know, it's
Teaching
a
farmers'
perfect,
kids
exactly,
how to farm, right?
exactly. And so we were in Yuma. We were in Central Phoenix. We then had another one over in the Avondale area, where teachers have been coming from all over the valley. And then down in Tucson, and we had teachers that came to the Tucson from the reservations as well as all the way down by the border.
Right.
So we have just hit teachers all over.
Yeah, and I think the basic lessons now that we're taking and we're using throughout from preschool all the way is the basic concepts of science, right? That and it gets more sophisticated as the kids get older, but some of the things we're doing is the seed germination. How about this whole recycle, reuse? How does that tie in with soils, for instance?
Oh, well, you are just speaking my language, because I think Pete would agree I might try to reuse a little too much. We've got things all over the house, but I can use it this way in planting.
It's a different way of thinking.
Exactly. So what's really interesting with our Plot of Sunshine and some of the things that we are doing is the vermicomposting, and how teachers want to compost, but so many of them are so afraid that if they do the traditional composting, and the also the administration is like, it's going to bring rats, it's going to bring insects and rodents, and so
yeah.
so it's like, okay, let's start with vermicomposting right in your classroom. And I show them how I had my vermicomposting right in my kitchen for a period of time. But adding all of the bedding, which is nothing but newspaper and recycled pages from books or whatever, not books that we use, but, and
Old
then
test scores.
there we go. And then also adding food scraps, our vegetables, our fruits that are being discarded, whether it's from our home or from the cafeteria. It can be added.
And it's funny how we all have different passions and we're all good at different things. And we don't particularly, like the things you guys do, I mean, I don't do, right? And Kim, you have a different approach that you're always happy. I'm not happy, and I think.
Wait, for the record, she's not always happy.
But and I think, you and I, Peter, maybe spent too many nights in Buffalo, too many cold days without seeing the sun. But, so our approach is different too, because you're coming at an entire career of education. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then every time we talk, I gravitate back toward really soils and water, right, and the seed part. And that's one of the other companies that I have is we do large-scale commercial composting. We do soil blending. We have 75 different products that are all organic. So it goes back to climate-smart agriculture. But none of this works to me without soils. And I remember the first year or so, you were talking about your stuff, and I was like, all right, I don't care. And then I'd talk about soils, and you don't talk to me. We've had enough of that. But it ends up kind of evolving as we're going. And then another kind of bizarre thing is we're here locally, which is enough work for all of us, right? It's like a gargantuan task to do what we're attempting to do. And then on top of that, then we decide to go to Malawi. And I've blamed you quite a bit for that, but it's also my concept is that we're testing this model that we have for UFE. And the model, really, we have the 3 pillars. And I'm not going to test you in front of the camera if you can't remember, but it's all about capacity building, and it starts with community. And Kim, you kind of resonated with this. I've gone to big garden people around the country, and I've checked out their gardens. And the one thing I tell everybody is gardens fail. And that's the one commonality. And one of the things, the reason they fail is there's no sustainability, right? So we had to do holistic problem solving, which is a term that I used, that was used, drilled into me back in the University of Buffalo in environmental design, and it's holistic problem solving. Well, what the heck does that mean? You're trying to avoid these unintended consequences. Well, if they're unintended, how do you know? But it's a matter of kind of going back and looking at things, really looking at the whole, right? So when we're going to a place like Malawi, it's totally different culturally, and we'll tap on that in a second. But it's the soils are different, the resources are different, everything. And if what we're doing here is to be applicable, which is our real goal, certainly across this country, but mostly, the idea is that we can go worldwide with this thing. We have to kind of solve some of those problems. So that's where I said, okay, we went out for a U.S. aid grant. We didn't get it, but we had built a team in the process. So you said to me, well, do you want to go? And then like an idiot, I followed suit, and we've been there for better part of 4 years. So, and as a matter of fact, you guys are going there next week again. So you've had several visits. I've gone there several times. So let's tap into what we're trying to. I'm going to ask you, Kim, first. What are we trying to accomplish there? And let's talk about some of these challenges with culture, right? And we have culture clashes here in the States too, but this is quite a bit. So tell me what your thought is, and what are we going to try to accomplish this time while we're over there?
Well, when you look into the eyes of the precious little children, no matter what the age, if they're in the primary school or they're in the secondary schools going, trying to head to college, Their eyes are so beautiful and they hold so much hope and so much promise. And I just can't get enough of that. And that is what keeps me going with Malawi. I've never been to a country. Peter, of course, has traveled more than I have, but I have never been to a developing country that has so little of their own, so little resources. So just to be able to use what they have so that it can be sustainable and work within that and then bring it to them in their schools so that the kids can learn starting at a young age where we will be trying to change the next generation
Right.
of people. I think it's very difficult to change the older generation there now, but if we can get the younger ones and continue with them, and yes, there has been plenty that you have had to purchase to help them, and it's been wonderful and awesome. This time around, I think that we are going to be able to get into the primary schools. We are going to start sowing scientific seeds with the girls' schools. We are getting more partners that are thinking, yeah, maybe I can help. I have a meeting tomorrow with Engineers Without Borders that I'm ecstatic about. But like with everything, we have had to start small.
Right.
But I see hope.
And it's crazy how many different people that we've heard about our entire lives, like the Peace Corps, and we're trying to get our Peace Corps guy. Peace Corps, I don't know if they are operational since COVID, but we still want to have a Peace Corps person. When I was there last time in my hotel, the UN was meeting literally to talk about how to use funds for Africa. So it was pretty interesting. When we talked about, I was just mentioned our structure, the three prongs is community first, because without that, there's no sustainability. And then the second thing is climate smart agriculture, which is just, doing things the right way and avoiding poisoning and polluting and trying to grow crops and showing them methods of growing that they may, and they've been growing for thousands of years, but the deal is we're now showing kind of newer techniques that tie into drought and all these other things. Then from there we go into the educational part, which we've been there for several years, but we haven't. I don't know how to even approach that because the last time I was there, and just to describe to the audience, we're in a community. We've called the project Dimba, and we're in a community that's one of the largest in Lukuni. And there's the second largest hospital in Malawi is right there on our property. The big church, there's I think it's a Catholic church there, and within a year or two, they're putting the cathedral in for Malawi right there. And there's a printing press that's been there for a long time, and I love the father who teaches that because he's really quite articulate and intelligent, and he's great to talk to. And then there's these 5 schools. So, Peter, explain what I've seen in the 5 schools. It's a daunting task because it's easy to follow curriculum in Arizona, but when I was there, I walked through the girls' school. There's no electricity, there's no computers anywhere. So part of our mission will be to break through that digital divide, and we're in the process of doing it, bringing laptops over, and we're probably going to be getting better internet throughout the entire area. And we are going to be, I guess we're turning the entire thing into a park-like or an agricultural place. So different from just pedagoggical here. Over there, it's also about sustenance.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, so just to place it on the map, Lilongwe is the capital, and Lukuni is just outside of the capital. And one of the things, if you parachuted into Malawi or Kenya even, Americans wouldn't be prepared for seeing how much maize they grow, and maize is what they call corn. So we don't need to help them grow corn. They're experts in corn. We do need to help them grow because in a more climate smart way, because right now the way they are able to get so much harvest of corn is with chemical fertilizers, which are imported, which are expensive, and that's going to be an issue down the road. So we need to help them with that. But yeah, our project is really focused on schools. As you said, the primary schools are very recent. Primary school was made free for every student in Malawi. But they're not funded well. So the girls' primary school has 80 girls in their classroom. They don't have desks. They sit on the floor. There's no
2,300
electricity.
total girls.
Yeah, big school. Dirt floors too. So the high schools tend to be a little bit better equipped in terms of their materials. But ultimately, it's not very different than teaching in the United States, in that teachers in the United States are underfunded, overworked. But Malawi, you would double their underfunding and double their overworked. And literally, at the boys' school and at the girls' school, not only do they teach at the boarding school
All day
themselves, then there's an open school where students come at night and they teach the lessons at nighttime
For the community.
as well. Yeah, for the community.
Right.
So they're overworked, and so that's one of the things we have to be very careful about when we say, "Oh, we want you to do this, we want you to do that," and move forward. So we really, this time, we of course want to continue working with the high schools, but we really want to expand to the primary schools and see what we can do there. Right. We're excited by a borehole project, and a borehole is where there's a hand pump and you get the water out. And Mike, I think you had this idea, is to pump the water up and then have it come down and
Into
be
a
able
tank.
to tank and then irrigate the area. And we think it could be a very nice garden around the borehole.
So that's one of the projects. So we divided this. This year, we've come up with a different way of getting engagement, community engagement. One is there's some bigger projects that they don't really have the capacity or the money or the funding for, and that is the grading for the road to get our little truck and our pump over to the river to pull water, to move things throughout the various campuses. So that's one of the things. You're talking about the girls and boys primary school, where we're doing these tanks and drip irrigation for gardens, but also at the girls primary school there's an abandoned building that will do animal husbandry, right? And then at the girls school we're doing the masonry. What's the masonry project about?
Well, we're working to hopefully get walls around the girls' bathrooms, because they don't have any privacy. So once the girls reach the age of having their menstrual cycles, they have nowhere to go to take care of any issues that they might have.
Right.
And so they stop coming to school, especially during that time. And so we're working to do that. Now, at the boys' school, what's interesting is that they need their wall, the wall erected around the school. And
Or a fence.
for privacy, yes, privacy fence. And I did, you're talking about engagement of the community, and that's been so difficult for us
Right.
up until now, when we're finally finding out that in the past, it just seems that volunteer groups come in, they do something, and then they pull out.
They do something, they take a photo, and then
They pull out.
Right.
And so often...
Not sustainable.
You're
Right.
right. So often
Right.
they haven't even given them the instruction on how to maintain things. Or they give money thinking that it's going to be used for a certain project.
And it goes in a lot of pockets.
And then it goes different places, and then they're like, well, you don't get any more. So they're not used to people sticking around like us.
Right.
They're used to them getting in and out, and either for their benefit, for the nonprofit's benefit and the photo opportunity, or they just quit funding. So we keep going back. And
we also we talked about these bigger projects where, we've planted 500 trees throughout the
Right.
campus, and we're just about to work with the river and do a little bit of leveling and the ability to gain access and the walls. We also had, I think there was one or two other bigger projects that we're working on that have big impact. But what you came up with was this concept of smaller projects, which
Right.
is really where community engagement's going to come from. What's that all about?
so It's what do they need? What what do they need and what are they most passionate about themselves that will get them excited? We don't want to just go in and say, you need this, you need this, you need that, because maybe it means nothing to them. So in working with them, we have asked them, what do you need? And of course, the girls' school, it was the walls around the
Not
bathroom.
really agriculture, but
Right.
for us to move forward into
Right.
and for them to see the impact of their own work.
Exactly.
We have to do other things.
And then with the primary boys' school, it was the fence around the school. And so then I had to start talking to them and say, okay, do the boys have a measuring tape? Can you have the Form 7 and Form 8 boys go out and measure the perimeter? Then can you have someone tell us how much it would be for the block and for this and that? And then do you have people that could come and just kind of clear out the area? And so it was almost like spoon feeding them the idea of getting their parents.
Building capacity.
Yeah,
right,
and
for them to.
and now they're like, "Oh, Kim, okay, I'm understanding a little more."
Right.
So I can't wait to go and see how this all plays out.
And you mentioned corn, and my story on corn is, and I think it's the scourge of the planet. Quite honestly, we monoculture and have kind of destroyed the farmlands of the Midwest with it. But over there, it's not. It's really a bit of a problem because one of the largest places left, natural places on the earth, is all throughout Africa. It's this bush, and what in Africa people here don't understand. They're growing basically with rain-fed agriculture. That means the rains, which are just starting now, they put seed down, and the easiest seed to grow is the corn. They throw it down. They'll put it anywhere. It's not even their own property half the time. And they grow, and they'll grow year in and year out. And then after a while, they've sucked all the nutrient out. They don't fertilize to speak of, or they're using, petrochemical fertilizers which dissipate. That doesn't help with the soil structure at all, and it doesn't help with biology. But then they'll move on to the next area, basically desertifying those areas. And one of the things we see both in, throughout, I was in Ethiopia and Zimbabwe, we're going to be doing some projects, and it's the same thing in Malawi. When I talk to them, I say, well, why so much corn? It's on every plate, and it's a different name.
Nsima in Malawi.
Nsima in Malawi.
Nsima, yeah.
Right there. Each place has a different name for it, and it's about a third of every meal.
It's their staple. It's like rice for a lot of cultures.
And I asked, well, why so much corn? And they said, well, this is Africa. This is what we do. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, well, corn did not originate in Africa. And it was brought over by basically Europeans who brought it over from here in North America, from Mexico. That's where it originated. And so it kind of circled back over there, and it became this easy thing to grow. But so they will still grow corn, and even if we've helped level out some of those fields to do it, and if they're using some of the water to help with that, but at the end of the day, we're trying to grow other things as well. So I guess to kind of wrap this whole thing up, give me some final thoughts on what you're going to be doing on this particular trip, what this approach is, because we really get hyper organized. You're going to be over for 4 or 5 weeks, and there's a lot to be done before you get there. So what are the things in the back of your mind? We have the solar dryer for fruits and stuff. We had all kinds of things.
Dehydrator.
What's the plan of attack?
My focus is community and helping them understand what community is, and helping them understand that you helping me and me helping you without being paid for it, is going to benefit you in the long run. And that will be done by showing them, by working with them. With you?
Yeah. Well, there's so much. So I'm going to come back to you because I'm sure you can say some more. But I'm really excited about the micro projects. And this would be, of course, borrowing the idea of micro banking, but doing micro projects where people come up with the projects, we give the funding, but they supply the labor, and we get the things done. So Kim and I will be evaluating and helping people develop micro projects. And then we're also cultivating funders in the United States to help out and sponsor these micro projects. So we're exploring that. We have the brick-walled, irrigated, standing height shamba that Mike likes to call bushes because he likes acronym names a lot. And so we want to get the irrigation going to the bushes and have those be useful for the boys and for the agriculture teachers and integrate that into the curriculum.
And then another thing for me are the clubs, the clubs at the schools. Because they are the kids that really want to be there and participate, and they want to learn. And although it is not in their curriculum in the secondary schools, they do have the clubs that meet once a week.
And you've got those clubs meeting, or the schools from here to there. What's that?
Yeah,
Zoom?
that has gone so well. It started small with me taking over some old-fashioned pen pal letters from a school here, Estrella Foothills Global Academy. Took them over to the boys' school. They wrote back, and so they had this pen pal little friendship going on. I discussed in an assembly at Estrella what Malawi was like, and then we have finally just had a few weeks ago our first meeting with the boys and girls secondary schools in Malawi, meeting with the 8th grade, all of the 8th grade at Estrella Global Academy. Estrella now wants their own garden so that because we can garden pretty much the same things.
Parallel, right.
Yeah. They want a garden so that they can now start talking about the best practices in gardening, the
Right.
same types of vegetables, but how they use them differently.
Yeah, Buckminster Fuller, give a person a tool and they teach themselves, right?
Buck your balls. Before we turn it to Mike for the closer, we look so far ahead that we even forget. It was just yesterday that you were at the school that won the award, right? Was it just yesterday?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know.
And you told us about how you took the Arizona Department of Education people around and stuff. I think it was yesterday, but and then we can turn it to Mike.
It's amazing we don't go from 1 hour to the next.
They haven't
There's so much
they
going on.
haven't won it yet, but
sorry.
they are in the finals, and they had a tour yesterday. That is Levine Elementary School, where we have a garden, and they are in the finals for a national spotlight on them for. They are a Title I school. So the committee was there, they were on their tour, and when they got to the garden, all 4 of them said, the garden. And they said to Michelle, who was the teacher that was with me in the garden, said, the garden is one of the biggest reasons that your school stood out and that you made the list of finalists.
That's great.
And I was like, music to my ears. It's going to make it so easy for me to take you on a tour of this garden. So we toured it.
as we wrap, that's great. As we wrap up, we want how can people get a hold of us that want to be involved, either just with their skill set, or they want to go to Africa and help out, or they want to be involved with education here in the U.S. and STEM? How do they, or they want to lend some money toward some of the materials that we have to do for these projects? How do they reach out to us?
Well, I hope that our website will be up on the screen at this time, but it's weareufe.org. The website gives you so much information on what we are about, QR codes where you can register to get our newsletter and updates on what's going on. We also have a calendar of events, of all the professional development and all the events that are going on, and also donation buttons that you can press and
So I want to
donate.
thank my guests today, Dr. Peter Rillero and Kim, and invaluable to what we're doing. at UFE, and what I love is the fact that in all these organizations I have people who I have to drag, and then there's others that pull me forward, and you two are two that do that. So
Thank you.
cheers to you, and thank you for the listeners today for our first podcast. Hopefully we have many more, and
Many more
you
to
guys
come.
come back.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.